Before you take the NASM CPT exam, be sure to watch this video so you know how to answer the 10 most difficult questions you can find on that exam. What's up everybody, and welcome back to PTPioneer, your #1 guide for a career in fitness. My name is Nick, and in today's video we're going to be discussing the 10 most difficult questions you can find on the NASM exam. Before we get started, head on over to PTPioneer.com and download our free NASM exam cheat sheet. The link is in the description as well as linked right up here. Be sure to also head on over to traineracademy.org and download their premium NASM study materials. These will reduce your study time in half, and they also offer an exam pass guarantee. Now, we may be talking about the hardest questions on the NASM exam, but the easiest thing you can do today is crush that like button, crush that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos in the future. I'm telling you, there's nothing easier you're going to do today. The NASM exam is a challenging and comprehensive fitness certification that expects you to know a wide range of information. While every question is weighted equally in terms of your test score, some questions are going to be harder than others. In this video, we're breaking down the 10 hardest questions you can expect to see on your NASM exam. Note that the questions explained in this video are not going to be the exact questions you'll encounter on your NASM exam. However, they represent the range of topics that you need to know in order to pass your exam. Again, before we get started, be sure to download our Trainer Academy NASM cheat sheet. This contains the most important reference information to guide your NASM studying. You can find that right up there. On an additional note, NASM now offers live remote proctoring exams, which may be an option you want to consider if you prefer to take your exam at home. You will be monitored by an individual over Zoom and must still abide by all the exam policies, including no phone, no scratch paper, no food, and no drink. The live remote proctored option is a great way to avoid the hassles of commuting to your testing site. However, be sure to have a quiet room to set up your computer in and notify everyone in your household that you should not be disturbed during the exam. With that said, here is our breakdown of the 10 hardest NASM exam questions. Question 1. During a vertical loading session, how long should the rest period be between each exercise? A, 60 seconds, B, 45 seconds, C, little to no rest, or D, 30 seconds. This question revolves around the strength training systems and requires you to know the acute programming variables for each system. In this case, the answer is C, little to no rest, as vertical loading involves performing a single set of each exercise before moving on to the next exercise. Once all the exercises have been performed for a single set, the client will begin again at the top until the total number of sets assigned has been repeated. Additional resistance training systems include the following: multiple set, pyramid, superset, complex training, drop set, and giant set. The acute training variables include repetitions, sets, training intensity, repetition tempo, rest intervals, training frequency, training volume, training duration, exercise selection, and exercise order. You need to be able to apply any of these acute training variables in the context of any given resistance training system. A good study preparation method is to write out a workout plan for every possible training system and list every acute variable with its relevant numbers. Understand that the questions on this topic could ask about any of the variables in any of the resistance training systems, so you need to be sure you're familiar with all of them. Question 2. What should be the focus in core strength exercises? Is it A, drawing in and bracing during exercises, B, improving neuromuscular efficiency and intervertebral stability, C, dynamic force generation at functional speed, or D, dynamic movements of the spine through the full range of motion? This question refers to both the OPT model and the core training section. As with the other chapters on training methods, the core training exercises vary depending on the client's current level in the OPT model. You need to know the overall goal of each OPT phase and the relevant exercises that fall into each phase. In this case, the focus for core training during the strength phase of the OPT model is dynamic movements of the spine through a full range of motion, or answer D. It is important that you know the complete OPT model and the focus for each type of training during each phase of the OPT model. This includes all phases of the core, balance, SAQ, plyometric, and resistance training. You will be asked on the exam about all of these phases for each training type. Question 3. Which movement compensation might occur during an overhead squat assessment? A. Knees moving outward. B. Head protruding forward. C. Shoulder elevation. Or D. Excessive forward lean. This question requires you to know about each movement assessment, as well as the errors that can occur during each assessment. In this case, the answer is D. Excessive forward lean. This is the only compensation on this list that would be visible during an overhead squat assessment. There are 4 major dynamic posture assessments: the overhead squat assessment, the single leg squat assessment, the pushing assessment, and the pulling assessment. Each assessment has compensations specific to that individual assessment. Some compensations, such as an arched lower back, can be seen in multiple different assessments. Others, such as an excessive forward lean, can only be seen in one assessment. Be sure you know how to perform all of the assessments and observe for the relevant compensations before sitting for the exam. Next to the OPT and exercise technique, the movement assessments are one of the most important aspects of the NASM exam. Question 4. Which of the following subsystems creates a stabilizing X across the thoracolumbar fascia? A. Deep longitudinal subsystem. B. Posterior oblique subsystem. C. Anterior oblique subsystem. Or D. Lateral subsystem. These subsystems are covered in Chapter 7 and are a new addition to the NASM CPT curriculum. In this case, the answer is B, the posterior oblique subsystem. The 4 subsystems are the deep longitudinal, the posterior oblique, the anterior oblique, and the lateral subsystems. Each subsystem is composed of different muscles that serve specific purposes as stabilizers within the human movement system. You need to know the component muscles within each subsystem and the general role of each subsystem to be fully prepared for the NASM exam. Question 5. The rotator cuff is comprised of all the following muscles except A. The supraspinatus, B. The teres major, C. The subscapularis, or D. The infraspinatus. The rotator cuff stabilizes the shoulders and includes the following 4 muscles: the teres minor, the infraspinatus, the subscapularis, and the supraspinatus. Answer B, the teres major, is not a part of the rotator cuff. Be sure to study all of the muscles in the anatomy section and know if they are components of any other systems. You should also know which movements the muscles perform, such as concentric shoulder internal rotation in the case of the subscapularis. Question 6. Which of the following is not a potential effect of excess calcium intake? A. Kidney stones, B. Nausea, C. Liver damage, or D. Constipation. When it comes to supplementation, one of the keys is knowing the tolerable upper limit for different supplements, as well as knowing the risks associated with excessive intakes of these supplements. These are primarily covered in lessons 2 and 3 in Chapter 10, Supplementation, in the NASM 7th edition textbook. In this case, C, liver damage, is not a risk of excessive calcium intake. However, high intakes of supplemental calcium can lead to the other issues listed as possible answers in this question. The main nutrients of concern when it comes to excessive intake are the fat-soluble vitamins, especially A, D, E, and K. While water-soluble vitamins can lead to toxicity, they are more readily excreted through urination than fat-soluble vitamins. As you study Chapter 10, make a list of each vitamin and mineral discussed, its tolerable upper intake level, and the potential side effects to both excessive intake and deficiency for each vitamin. Question 7. In regard to anatomical position, where is the gastrocnemius in relation to the soleus? Is it A, medial, B, superior, C, lateral, or D, inferior? This question combines knowledge of the muscles, their locations on the body, and the anatomical reference positions, as well as the definitions used to describe locations on the body relative to other positions. The soleus and gastrocnemius are muscles in the calf. The gastrocnemius is above the soleus while viewing the body in an anatomical reference position. Therefore, the answer is B, superior, which is the scientific way to say above while describing locations on the body. Recall that the anatomical position occurs while viewing the body from the front, with the arms at the side, the palms facing forward, and the thumbs upward. If you were to turn a person upside down, the gastrocnemius would still be superior to the soleus, even though in this case it is technically above the gastrocnemius when the body is upside down relative to the ground. The different descriptions for the relative location from the anatomical reference position are the following. Superior, closer to the head relative to a reference point. Inferior, closer to the feet relative to a reference point. Medial, closer to the midline relative to a reference point. And lateral, further from the midline relative to a reference point. Additional terms include proximal and distal, which are typically used when referring to the attachment points of a muscle, or the different ends of the limbs. The proximal attachment is closer to the midline, while the distal attachment is further from the midline. For example, the proximal bicep attachment is near the shoulder, while the distal attachment is near the elbow. This question could be asked about any locations and organs from the textbook. However, it is a safe bet that you will get asked at least one question about a major muscle discussed in the book and the anatomical terminology that is used to describe its location. Question 8. Within the muscle, which type of mechanoreceptors are sensitive to changes in length? A, the Golgi tendon organs. B, muscle spindles. C, afferent neurons. Or D, efferent neurons. The mechanoreceptors that detect changes in muscle length are the muscle spindles. The muscle spindles run parallel to the muscle fibers and cause the fibers to contract if a stretch occurs too rapidly. Muscle spindles and Golgi tendon organs and their relevance to the neuromuscular system are one of the key pieces of anatomy terminology and concepts that you must be familiar with in order to pass the NASM CPT exam. Refer to the NASM cheat sheet for a quick reference of both of these mechanoreceptors. Question 9. Which of the following is an example of emotional support? A, having a friend work out with the client. B, praising a client for showing up and working hard. C, giving the client feedback on their progress. D, having a spotter at the gym. This question comes from Section 2 of the 7th edition of the NASM curriculum, which covers sports psychology and behavior change. Emotional support is when the trainer shows empathy and encouragement towards the client's exercise experience. Therefore, the correct answer to this question is B, praising the client for showing up and working hard. Additional types of support include instrumental, informational, and companionship. The types of support are one of the most important topics from the sports psychology section. Additional key topics from this section include the stages of behavior change, common barriers to exercise, and setting SMART goals. You will probably see at least one question covering each of these topics. If you can list each component of the above topics, you will be able to answer any of the relevant questions from this section. Refer to the Trainer Academy cheat sheet for a list of SMART goals, the stages of change, and common barriers to exercise. Question 10. Which of the following is a common form mistake during a push-up? A, feet too wide. B, elbow flexion. C, stomach falling toward the ground. Or D, retraction and depression of the shoulder blades. The exercise technique section is one of the key knowledge areas needed to pass this exam. While there are a wide range of exercises covered, if you understand the common movement compensations, you can typically extrapolate these to the proper technique on the actual exercises. For example, the stomach falling to the ground during a push-up is similar to the arched lower back compensation seen in many movement assessments. If you're familiar with a push-up, you probably instinctively knew this. However, if you did not, going down the list of possible compensations should allow you to eliminate the rest of the answers as possible errors. As we discussed regarding the dynamic assessments, you must know which compensations or form errors will occur in each assessment or exercise. The possible answers in this type of question could include errors in other movements, but are not applicable to the movement discussed in that specific question. In general, when studying for the exam, anytime you see a common error box in the curriculum, pay special attention to these sections as they are likely targets for specific questions on the exam. These questions represent the range of topics and typical wording on the questions you can expect to see on your exam. While using these questions to prepare for your exam, focus on the underlying concept instead of memorizing each question presented. While these questions could theoretically be the same as on your exam, more than likely these will not be the specific questions presented to you on exam day. In addition to downloading the study cheat sheet, if you need more preparation for the exam, be sure to check out the free Trainer Academy NASM practice assessment in order to gauge your readiness for the exam. We hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the future content coming out. Make sure to check out that free study cheat sheet linked right up here, as well as checking out the premium study materials from Trainer Academy. These materials really will help your study preparation, and Trainer Academy offers that exam pass guarantee.